Welcome again to Joe Stunner Boxing. How are you doing? Pretty good, I hope. Let's talk a bit about, I guess you'd call it the big fight coming up at the weekend. It's in the T-Mobile Arena over in Vegas, and of course it's between Saul Canelo Alvarez and Jermell Charlo, who is currently, has he been stripped of any belts yet? He's the undisputed super welterweight champion, whereas Canelo is the undisputed super middleweight champion. And a few eyebrows were raised when this fight was announced because obviously there's the weight disparity. This is the first fight of Canelo's three-fight PBC deal, and I think it's an interesting fight. I don't think it's as one-sided as a lot of people seem to be saying, because when it was announced, people thought, what, jumping up two weight divisions to take on Canelo? I mean, where's all that coming from? Well, let's not forget that throughout history, lots of fighters jumped up when there were just the original 8 weight divisions. A lot of fighters jumped up what would now be 2 weight divisions to take on bigger men. It was considered to be, not that unusual. Ray Robinson as a middleweight, who was really never more than probably a modern day super welterweight, maybe a 156 pounder. He moved up from welterweight, dominated the middleweights, although he did lose. I mean, he won the title 5 times at middleweight, but in order to win it 5 times, you've got to lose it, haven't you? But he was fighting people like Carmen Basilio and other guys who were coming up from the lower weights. Now, I don't think that the weight disparity is that important. It is important because don't forget, Canelo Alvarez, he is the undisputed super middleweight champ, so he has settled into that division, to put it mildly. He's dominated it. And Charlo, having said that, I mean, he's 6 foot tall. If he was to move up to middleweight, no one would bat an eyelid. The fact that he's jumping up 2 modern day weights that might raise an eyebrow or two, but I don't think it's the major factor. I wouldn't dismiss it at all. I wouldn't say it's not important. It is, clearly. But don't forget, Canelo himself was a super welterweight for long periods of his career. I mean, he turned pro at 15. I think he was a super feather when he turned pro at 15, and he moved up through the weights and sort of settled on that super welterweight division for quite a while. But at 6 foot tall, Charlo is taller than Canelo probably by about 4 inches. And okay, this isn't a height contest. I appreciate that. But at the same time, if you look at the age, Canelo's now 33. How old's Charlo? 30, 31, something like that? I don't think there's a great deal of difference in age. But he's very well preserved, Charlo, because like all PBC fighters, he actually doesn't fight that much. This will be his first fight since he had a rematch with Brian Castano, knocked him out in 10 rounds. Castano at the time was undefeated, 17-0-2. Good performance after a split draw with Castano. The draw was in 2021, but the rematch, which was Jermell Charlo's last fight, was in May of last year. So we're talking May, June, July. Yeah, we're talking, 16 months out of the ring. But that's not uncommon for a PBC fighter. So he had the one fight in last year. He had the one fight in 2021, which is Castano. So in the last 2 years, he's fought one person and just 2 fights. In 2020, he took on Jason Rosario, knocked him out in 8 rounds. And to find a year where Charlo had more than one fight in the year, you have to go back to 2019. He took on Tony Harrison and Jorge Cota. So activity is obviously not Charlo's. It's not his forte. And I think that's more of an issue rather than the perceived size difference. Because, as we know, Canelo is the sort of polar opposite. He fights a lot. Charlo's 35 wins and 1 defeat, 1 draw, whereas Canelo is 59 wins, 39 loads of KOs, 2 defeats and 2 draws. And he was last seen with against John Ryder, winning a dominant 12-round decision. That was in May of this year, over an incredibly game Ryder, who is really, even now, still quite an underrated fighter. But I think that beating would have put years on him, to be honest with you. And he's in his 30s himself, John. Prior to that, in 2022, he fought, for the third time, he fought Gennady Golovkin, which was, Golovkin didn't get going until about 8 or 9 rounds into the fight. It was of the 3 fights with Golovkin, this was easily the most dominant for Canelo. And that was in September last year. Prior to that, same year, that was in May, because Canelo doesn't like to fight around Cinco de Mayo for obvious reasons. He lost a 12-round decision to Dimitri Bivol at light heavyweight. Bivol is a small light heavy. He says he can make super middle, and there was talk of him Canelo fighting Bivol in a rematch, but that never materialised. And then we go back to 2021. We got fights with Caleb Plant, Billy Joe Saunders, Avni Yildirim. I think he fought, was it 3 or 4 times in 20? I think 3 times in 2021. And in 2020, Callum Smith. That was just a one-off for Canelo in 2020. And then twice in 2029. So 2019. So he's been fighting regularly against good quality opposition, and he's mopped up the division, wiped out the opposition at super middleweight. And having said that, at 33, there's been talk of him perhaps being not over the hill, but coming to the downside of his career now. It wouldn't be surprising at that age, especially after 63 fights. But I mean, he has, even though for me there's always a black mark over Canelo because of the failed drug test, and for which he was never really punished. You can't knock his activity, but of course it puts miles on the clock. Now the question now is, at 5'8", with all that experience at super middleweight, what's he going to look out for with Jermell Charlo? Well, if Charlo's to have a chance of winning, despite all the inactivity, he's got to use his dimensions. He's got to box a lot. He's got to try and keep it long. Canelo, a bull of a fighter at super middleweight, regardless of how he's put that bulk and power on. He's not someone you want to stand in front of. Charlo is going to have to move a lot, and I see Canelo with that, water on rock, very sort of cultured, quite economical pressure that nevertheless puts it on you mentally as well as physically. I see him. I see this fight probably going the same way as the Caleb Plant fight. I think that's, if I had to draw a similarity, I see early on, I see Canelo gradually finding his groove. Maybe after 4 rounds, Charlo might even be ahead. But I see Canelo putting the heat on gradually, going through the gears, landing by far the heavier punches, although Charlo himself can crack a bit, but again, he's unproven at the higher weight. And we know Canelo has got a tremendous chin. Charlo is going to have to move, give him all sorts of angles, try to keep him resetting, use the jab an awful lot, not get greedy if he has any kind of success. He's going to, at some point, he will have to take heavy punches from Alvarez. I see no reason to believe that Charlo isn't a game tough guy. I like the way he's reversed the draw and the defeat on his record with knockout victories, but I honestly can't get past the inactivity thing. I honestly can't. Now, of course, Alvarez has talked about, well, there's been talk, actually it's come from Bud Crawford himself, of some sort of catchweight contest. Is Alvarez overlooking Charlo? There's talk about him, if he beats Jermell, they're then fighting Jermell, who is inactive. I mean, he's virtually semi-retired, Jermell, but he is a middleweight belt holder. And there was talk of Alvarez fighting Errol Spence, but of course that went out the window when Spence got defeated. I see Alvarez putting the heat on Charlo gradually, and down the stretch, the last third of the fight, really stamping his authority. Probably taking over in the middle rounds, and then in the last third of the fight, so we're talking 9, 10, 11, 12, really putting some serious pressure, some hurtful punches on a slowed down Charlo. But I don't think for that first third of the fight, maybe the first 5 rounds, maybe even the first half of the fight, I don't see it being one-way traffic at all. I see Charlo pinching a few rounds here and there, having some success. But it might be one of those fights that after 6 rounds you're thinking, Charlo's doing well. He might even be ahead, but he's losing the fight. It's going to be one of those scenarios, because you can just tell that Alvarez is going through the gears, finding the range, landing the more hurtful punches. Do I think he'll stop Charlo? I'm gonna stick my neck out and say I think Charlo goes the distance. I don't think he gets stopped. I think this will be an Alvarez win, 115, 113, 116, 112, round about that much of a gap. Because I think Charlo will come to win. You know, he is a fighting man. He won't come to just survive. Maybe by the last 2 or 3 rounds he'll be hanging on. But I think he's motivated, and he is. I think he'll give a good account of himself. But I see Alvarez winning a close-ish decision, unanimous. But yeah, I think we might be saying, oh, Jermell Charlo did better than some of us thought he would. So what do you think? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Do you think Charlo will win? Or do you think Alvarez knocks him out? Or, you tell me what you think. Comments below, as always. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Hit the subscribe button and give the old like, the old thumbs up a tap as well, because they count those apparently. And I will answer your any comments that you have. It's getting to the point where I can't answer all of your comments, because there's just too many of them. It's not the old days when I had like 500 subscribers, but all you regulars, all you people who have already subscribed, I do notice your names and I do appreciate it, so thank you for that. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to reading what you've got to say. Until then, I'll bid you farewell and bye for now.